Hey guys, welcome to Sleeping Stone Whispers. Tonight's story takes us back to the heart of the Middle Ages, not to war or kings, but to something much quieter, the slow warmth of a candlelit tavern, the soft hum of old songs, and the comfort of freshly brewed ale shared among friends. This is the Ale of Evening, a gentle journey of peace, craftsmanship, and the simple beauty of medieval nights. A story not of wild revelry, but of calm hearts, wooden benches, and the quiet laughter that fades into sleep. So, find your favorite corner, let your mind rest, and drift with me into a world where time moved slower and warmth came from a humble cup. If you enjoy these slow historical tales, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell. It really helps the channel grow, and it means I can keep bringing you more stories to fall asleep to. Now, let's step softly into the Tavern of Thornmere, where the first ale of evening waits. The fields of Thornmere lay quiet beneath a pale gold sky. The last of the wheat stood stacked in careful bundles, their stalks whispering as the wind drifted through. The harvest was done, and the land itself seemed to exhale, a long, slow breath after months of labor. In the distance, the small village stirred. Smoke rose from crooked chimneys, and the sound of wooden wheels creaked over dirt paths. The air smelled of grain dust and cooling earth. Near the edge of the fields, an old man named Aldrich leaned on his scythe, gazing at the stubbled ground. His back ached, but his heart was steady. He had seen many harvests, yet each one felt like a small miracle, a reminder that time moved in patient circles. At the village square, children chased one another between baskets of barley and rye. Laughter mixed with the distant toll of the chapel bell, soft and unhurried. The women sorted the grains, their hands moving in rhythm, sift, shake, gather. They spoke in low voices, sharing news of the season's yield and the rumor that this year, the tavern would make its first brew in over a decade. For Thornmere, ale wasn't a drink, it was a memory. The last brewer, old Tom the barrelman, had passed years ago, taking with him the secret of the perfect malt. Since then, the tavern's hearth had burned low, its benches dusty, its mugs empty. Only the scent of oak and the faded laughter of nights long gone remained. But now, a new fire was being kindled. Aldrich's granddaughter, a quiet girl named Alara, had been watching and learning. She studied the grains, the water, the slow heat of the kettle. She said little, but her eyes carried the same patience her grandfather had, the kind that could turn time itself into flavor. That evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, the villagers gathered by the granary. The air cooled, the first stars appeared, and the old men hummed half-remembered songs about good harvests and better drink. Aldrich lifted a small cup of spring water, tasting it carefully, then nodded to Alara. "It begins again," he said softly. The crowd fell quiet. Someone lit a lantern, another placed the first bundle of grain beside the stone mill. The night settled around them, calm, steady, and full of promise. As the moon rose, casting silver light across the empty fields, the people of Thornmere went to their homes. The harvest was done. Tomorrow, the brewing would begin. And though no one said it aloud, they all felt it. A new warmth was returning to the heart of their village. Morning arrived with a soft mist curling over the thatched roofs of Thornmere. The fields, once alive with movement, now stood silent, their gold replaced by pale stubble and shadow. But near the heart of the village, a small smoke rose again, gentle and steady. Inside the tavern's yard, Alara stood by the millstone, sleeves rolled high, her hands dusted with flour-fine grain. The rhythmic turning of the wheel echoed like a heartbeat. Each handful of crushed barley fell into the wooden trough below, releasing the faint, sweet scent of malt. Her grandfather Aldrich sat nearby, feeding kindling into the copper kettle that rested on an iron grate. The fire crackled, quiet and clean, its orange light flickering against the gray morning. He didn't speak much, he never did when the brewing began. Some things were not taught in words but in silence, through watching, waiting, and feeling the rhythm of the task. Ilara's hands trembled slightly as she carried the first scoop of grain to the kettle. Aldrich's eyes followed her movements with the slow patience of a man who had spent his life learning that nothing worth making could ever be rushed. "Not all at once," he said, his voice rough as old oak. "Let the water take its time." Ilara nodded. She poured the grain in a steady stream, stirring with a long wooden paddle. Steam rose, carrying with it a smell both earthy and comforting, like the warmth of bread before dawn. Around them, the village went about its morning chores, the bell from the chapel tower, the sound of a wheelwright's hammer, a rooster calling into the fog. Hours passed, uncounted. The world outside moved fast, the fire burned, the sun climbed, the breeze shifted, but within the small circle of the brewing yard, time stretched and softened. The kettle hissed and sang. The air shimmered with heat. When Ilara's arm began to ache, Aldrich took the paddle and stirred. "Patience," he murmured. "Ale is like a story, it doesn't tell itself until it's ready." Later, the old brewer's bench filled with curious faces, children with sticky fingers, a shepherd wiping his brow, and even Sister Mirwen, the quiet nun from the abbey who came with a basket of herbs. "Chamomile," she said softly, placing it on the table. "For calmness. And juniper, to keep the spirit clean." Aldrich thanked her with a small bow. He took one of the sprigs and dropped it into the steaming mix. The scent deepened, sweet, woodsy, ancient. The nun smiled faintly and vanished as quietly as she came. By midday, the sky had cleared. Sunlight spilled across the yard, catching in the copper of the kettle until it looked like liquid gold. The villagers drifted away one by one, leaving only Aldrich and Ilara. Together, they watched the brew settle, thickening into a golden-brown swirl that moved like slow wind. When at last the fire was dimmed, Aldrich lifted the ladle and filled a small cup. He held it up to the light, then took a careful sip. The taste wasn't finished, it was raw, young, and restless. But beneath it, there was promise. He handed the cup to Ilara. "It's waiting," he said. She tasted it. It burned her tongue slightly, but the warmth that followed was soft and deep. It wasn't yet ale, but it was the beginning of one. That evening, as the sun slipped low and painted the tavern walls in amber, Ilara wrote the day's notes in her small ledger: grain from the south field. Fire steady. Chamomile and juniper. Patience kept. Outside, Aldrich sat alone, watching the last smoke rise into the twilight. His eyes were distant, perhaps seeing old friends long gone, cups raised in laughter under candlelight. He smiled, a small, tired smile. "It begins again," he whispered once more. And somewhere inside the kettle, beneath layers of grain and warmth, the village's first ale in 10 years slowly dreamed itself into being. By the time the leaves turned bronze along Thornmere's lanes, the air had changed. The wind carried the scent of smoke and crushed grain, and the evenings came earlier, as if the world itself was slowing down to listen. In the tavern yard, the barrels stood like sleeping giants, sealed and stacked in patient rows. Each one held a small piece of the village's hope, waiting to become something more than water and wheat. Elara ran her hand along the rim of one cask, tracing the initials burned into the lid, T.B., Tom Barrelman, the old brewer. Her grandfather had kept the mark out of respect. The tavern's benches had been scrubbed clean, the hearth swept, and candles placed in every corner. For the first time in years, the door would open again. The day passed quietly. Chickens pecked at the frost-bitten ground. Children whispered through the windows, trying to catch a glimpse of the miracle that was brewing inside. And when the church bell struck 6, Aldrich lit the tavern's lantern. "Tonight," he said softly, "we remember what warmth tastes like." The villagers gathered slowly, stepping through the door as if entering a sacred place. Their faces glowed in the candlelight. They spoke in low voices, their words softened by anticipation. Aldrich filled the first wooden cup himself, his hand steady but his eyes wet with memory. The liquid inside shimmered, not bright, but warm, like honey in dusk light. He lifted the cup, nodded once toward the hearth, and drank. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, a breath escaped him, deep, relieved, content. He set the cup down and looked at his granddaughter. "Elara," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "it's yours." She stepped forward, took the cup, and raised it to her lips. The ale was smooth and full, touched by chamomile and the faint sharpness of juniper. It wasn't perfect, not yet, but it was alive. It carried the taste of the fields, the smoke, the stories of those who had waited. Around them, murmurs began, a laugh here, a hum there. Someone began a quiet tune, and others joined in, their voices blending like threads of smoke. The tavern's walls, long silent, seemed to sigh in relief. The night moved slowly. No one rushed, no one shouted. The ale flowed in gentle rhythm. Old friends found their seats, hands clasped over cups. A shepherd spoke of stars. Sister Mirwan told a story about Saint Arnulf, the patron of brewers, who believed that ale was proof that patience was holy. And Aldrich, tired, smiling, leaned back and listened. His eyes flickered toward the rafters where candlelight met shadow, and he thought of the nights that had once filled this hall, laughter, song, the scent of oak and thyme. By midnight, the last cups were empty. The villagers lingered, unwilling to let the warmth fade. Outside, the wind moved softly through the eaves, whispering against the thatch. When at last the crowd thinned and only embers glowed in the hearth, Elara gathered the mugs and washed them one by one. Her grandfather watched her in silence. "You did well," he said quietly. She looked up, smiling faintly. "We did well." He nodded, closing his eyes for a long moment. "Then let the barrels rest. The ale will dream of better nights." Elara blew out the last candle. The tavern sank into darkness, but not emptiness. For the first time in many years, the air held something living, the scent of promise, patience, and peace. Outside, the harvest moon hung low over Thornmere. And beneath it, the tavern of old Tom Barrelman, reborn through quiet hands, whispered softly into the night. Morning came soft and amber, spilling through the tavern's narrow windows and across the grain-dusted floorboards. The air carried the deep, comforting scent of oak wood and faint smoke, the smell of a place that had finally remembered its purpose. Elara awoke before dawn, drawn by the quiet hum of life that lingered in the walls. She stepped into the main hall barefoot, her steps silent against the cool boards. The hearth was still warm from the night before, the last of the embers pulsing like sleepy hearts. Aldrich was already there, seated by the window, polishing a cup with slow, deliberate motions. The old man didn't look up when she entered. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. Elara smiled faintly. "It feels strange," she said. "Hearing silence that isn't empty." He nodded, setting the cup aside. "That's what happens when a place wakes up." The tavern indeed felt awake, though not loudly, not bustling. It was more like an old song remembered under one's breath. Dust motes drifted through beams of light, and the scent of ale and wood mingled with morning air. From outside came the faint sounds of a blacksmith at work, a rooster crowing, the soft clatter of a cartwheel. By mid-morning, the tavern doors swung open. Old Marwan, the carpenter, was the first to arrive. He brought with him a bundle of firewood and a grin that wrinkled his entire face. "Couldn't stay away," he said, dropping the logs near the hearth. "The smell reached my house before the rooster did." Behind him came Sister Mirwan again, her white habit touched with bits of straw from the path. She placed a small loaf of bread on the counter, crust dark, inside soft and warm. "For the day," she said. "And for patience." Elara thanked her, then filled a cup from the first barrel. The ale poured smooth and golden, catching the sunlight as it fell into the wooden mug. Marwan took a long sip and sighed deeply, closing his eyes. "That," he said, "is worth 10 winters of waiting." The day unfolded slowly. The tavern filled not with noise but with murmurs, neighbors talking about their crops, a shepherd counting his sheep, 2 travelers resting their feet and telling stories of the northern roads. The laughter was low, unforced, and the kind that left a glow behind. By afternoon, even Aldrich smiled, the quiet, rare kind of smile that carried a lifetime's worth of contentment. He moved through the room refilling mugs, straightening benches, nodding at old friends. The wooden walls soaked in every sound, as if they too were thirsty. Outside, the sun dipped low, and smoke began to curl from the tavern's chimney. The scent of roasting grain and oak wood spread through the lane, mingling with autumn leaves and cool air. Children passing by on errands slowed their steps, looking in through the windows, their eyes wide with wonder. Inside, Elara stood behind the counter, pouring another round. She paused, inhaling deeply. "This smell," she whispered. "It feels like home." Aldrich looked up, meeting her gaze across the room. "That's because it is." Evening fell. Lanterns glowed in every corner, the candles flickering with soft gold light. A traveler began to hum a tune, an old one, about harvest moons and long roads. One by one, voices joined him until the tavern was full of sound, gentle, human, alive. Aldrich leaned back against the counter, eyes half closed. "Do you hear that?" he said quietly. Elara smiled. "The sound of people remembering they're not alone." The old man nodded. "And that, my girl, is what ale was made for." Outside, the last light faded beyond the hills. Inside, the tavern glowed like a beacon against the cold, its windows spilling warmth onto the cobblestone path. The smell of oak and smoke drifted upward into the night, a signal to the village that Thornmere's heart was beating again. By the second week of the tavern's reopening, the wooden benches had begun to learn the weight of people again. Each plank seemed to hold a new memory, a hand rested here, a story told there, a sigh left behind like dust in sunlight. The tavern never roared with noise. It breathed. Slowly, quietly, like the village itself. The door creaked open through the day, not with grand arrivals but with the gentle shuffle of boots and the soft clink of coin against cup. Aldrich had placed the benches himself, long, sturdy oak pieces polished by time and by the countless lives that had sat upon them before. Every bench, he told Alara, has its own kind of soul. Some carry laughter. Some carry sorrow. You'll know which is which by who chooses to sit there. And she did begin to notice. By the hearth, where the fire burned steady and warm, sat a fisherman named Corin. He came most mornings, his hands still smelling faintly of river reeds, his shoulders stooped from years of pulling nets. He drank his ale slowly, as if each sip brought back a piece of the sea he had lost to age. Sometimes he spoke, mostly he listened. Near the window, an old widow named Hilda took her place. She never drank more than half a cup, but she stayed until dusk, knitting and humming a lullaby that no one quite remembered. When she laughed, it was quiet, like the rustle of fabric in the wind. And always, in the corner by the door, there was a space kept empty. Aldrich said it was for the traveler who had not yet arrived. Every tavern needs one, he said. A place waiting for someone who doesn't know they're coming. Alara found herself drawn to that empty corner. She wondered who it was meant for, a merchant with dust on his cloak, perhaps, or a monk carrying stories from far abbeys. Sometimes she imagined it was for her mother, who had passed when Alara was small, her face now half faded in memory. By late afternoon, the tavern was full of soft voices. Someone began a quiet story about the year the river froze early. Another told of a ghost seen near the orchard. A boy recited a verse he'd learned from the traveling bard who came through in spring. Alara moved among them, refilling mugs, carrying bread, listening. She realized that what filled the tavern wasn't just ale, it was the space between words, the shared silences that seemed to heal something unspoken. Outside, the weather turned colder. Leaves fell like slow rain, and the wind began to sing down the narrow lanes. But inside, the warmth deepened. The fire's crackle became the tavern's pulse, steady and sure. Late in the evening, when only a few lingered and the candles had burned low, a stranger entered. He was wrapped in a travel-worn cloak, his boots marked with dried mud from distant roads. He looked around once, then made his way to the corner by the door, the empty bench. Aldrich watched him quietly. "You've come far?" he asked. The man nodded, setting down a small leather pouch. "Far enough to forget where I started," he said. His voice was low, gentle. Alara poured him a cup and placed it before him. The man held it for a long moment, staring into the golden surface before taking a sip. He closed his eyes, exhaled, and smiled. "This," he said softly, "tastes like home." Aldrich looked toward Alara, his eyes warm with quiet satisfaction. "See?" he murmured. "Every bench finds its soul." Outside, the wind grew colder still, but the tavern held steady, its doors open, its fire burning, its benches filled with the gentle rhythm of human hearts remembering what it meant to belong. And as the last lantern flickered low, Alara thought to herself that this was how stories truly began, not with grand heroes or battles, but with people finding warmth together in the soft light of evening. The night arrived wrapped in silver fog, soft as wool. The moon rose over Thornmere's rooftops, pale and wide, casting light across the cobblestones like spilled milk. From every corner of the village came the faint, steady glow of one place, the tavern, its windows burning with the color of honey. Inside, the fire crackled high, throwing shadows that danced along the beams. The smell of oak smoke and ale hung thick in the air, rich enough to taste. Laughter rippled through the room like a quiet stream, never loud, never hurried, just warm. Elara moved among the tables with a tray in hand, her braid swaying as she passed. She'd never seen the tavern so alive. Every bench was full. The fisherman Corin told stories of rivers that shimmered under starlight. Widow Hilda hummed her lullabies again, softer this time, smiling each time a child joined her tune. The traveler in the corner listened, eyes half closed, as if he were storing the sound for some lonely road ahead. And Aldrich, dear, old Aldrich, sat behind the counter, his cup untouched but his eyes glowing like embers. He looked not at the people but at the room itself, as though the walls were alive and breathing, and he was watching an old friend wake from a long, sweet sleep. "Listen to that," he said quietly to Elara when she passed him. She paused, tilting her head. Voices murmured, mugs clinked, a lute strummed somewhere near the hearth. But underneath it all was something deeper, a slow, steady rhythm, the heartbeat of the room itself. "I hear it," she said softly. "It's peaceful." Aldrich smiled. "It's the sound of warmth finding its way home." Near the fire, a young boy named Tomlin took up the lute. His fingers trembled, and at first, the notes stumbled, soft, uneven. But soon, a melody took shape, simple and true. It carried across the tavern like light spilling across the floor, catching on smiles and soft sighs. A woman began to sing, not loudly, but like someone singing to herself. Then another joined, and another, until the whole room was breathing music. The kind of song that didn't have a name, because it didn't need one. Elara leaned against the wall, the tray forgotten in her hands. She watched them all, neighbors, travelers, strangers, and felt a quiet ache in her chest. It was joy, but the kind that comes wrapped in stillness, the kind you feel when you realize you are part of something much older and much kinder than yourself. The candles burned lower. The music softened. Outside, frost began to creep across the windows, etching delicate patterns that shimmered in the firelight. When the last note faded, Aldrich rose slowly to his feet. He raised his cup. "To those who came before," he said. "And those who will come after. To warmth that outlives the fire." The crowd murmured their agreement and raised their cups in return. The sound of their toast was soft, not a cheer, but a gentle clink, like bells in the fog. They drank, smiled, and fell into that perfect kind of silence where everything feels whole. Later, when the last of the guests had gone and only the embers glowed, Elara helped Aldrich close the shutters. The night outside was cold and quiet, but inside, the air still held the echo of laughter, the scent of oak, the warmth of human closeness. As she snuffed the final candle, Elara whispered, "The tavern feels alive now." Aldrich placed a hand on her shoulder. "It is," he said softly. "It was only sleeping." The fire sighed. The last spark faded to ash. And somewhere in the walls, the warmth lingered, not gone, just waiting for tomorrow's voices to wake it again. Outside, the fog thickened. The moon drifted higher. And the tavern of Thornmere, reborn in oak, smoke, and gentle hearts, settled into its first peaceful night's sleep. Morning came soft and blue. A mist lay over Thornmere, still and patient, as though the world had paused to listen. The tavern, now alive after so many silent years, breathed in the cool air through its chimney. From inside came the faintest sound, a single, wavering note from a lute. Tomlin sat near the hearth, the boy who had played the night before. His hair was messy, his fingers uncertain, but his face glowed with that quiet, secret pride only music can give. Each note trembled like the first step of a new day. Ilara, sweeping the floor, paused to listen. "You're up early," she said. Tomlin shrugged. "Couldn't sleep. The tune wouldn't leave me." "Then play it again," she said with a smile. "Before it forgets you." He did. Slowly at first, then smoother, like the song was remembering him too. The melody filled the air, gentle, circular, warm. It carried through the rafters, brushing against the dust and cobwebs that clung to the old beams. Somewhere above, the sound stirred something, a soft creak, a sigh from the old wood, as though the tavern itself approved. Outside, Aldrich was stacking logs by the door, the cold biting at his fingers. He heard the music and stopped. A faint smile lifted his face. "That boy," he murmured, "is going to wake the whole village." He stepped back in, lantern in hand. The light caught the suspended motes of dust, making them shimmer like stars. "Ilara," he said softly, "let it play. A tavern without song is just a room pretending to be alive." She nodded. "I think the tavern already knows that." By midday, the sound had spread beyond the walls. People passing by slowed their steps. The blacksmith leaned on his hammer. The baker opened her shutters. Even the geese by the pond quieted down as if listening. Music has a way of making time move differently, slower, kinder. And in Thornmere, where winters were long and memories longer, it became the heartbeat of the day. Later that evening, when the sun dipped behind the hills, Aldrich hung the lantern outside the door, the sign that the tavern was open again. Its soft glow spilled over the road, guiding the villagers in like a gentle invitation. They came, not for ale this time, but for the sound. Some brought instruments, some just their voices. An old man with a fiddle, a woman with a tin whistle, and a child with nothing but a wooden spoon and a tin mug. And when they began to play together, the tavern changed once more. The rafters, dark and heavy with age, seemed to lift a little higher. The air grew warm, the fire leaned forward, and every candle flame swayed like it was keeping rhythm. Tomlin played his lute with new confidence, the melody weaving through the laughter and clinking mugs like a thread of gold. When the song ended, no one clapped, they just sighed, deeply, as though breathing out years of silence. Aldrich raised his cup once more. To songs that remember what hearts forget. Ilara whispered, and to lanterns that never burn out. Outside, the wind stirred the lantern's flame, making it flicker but never fade. Inside, music lingered, soft, unhurried, endless. The night stretched on, and beneath the tavern's old wooden rafters, Thornmere found its soul again. Evening crept in like a soft tide, slow, sure, and gentle. The lantern outside the tavern flickered against the fog, calling the villagers home again. The wooden door opened and closed like the rhythm of a heartbeat. Each creak was familiar now, as if the tavern itself was breathing in company and exhaling warmth. Inside, the air shimmered with faint song. Tomlin's lute rested on his lap, his fingers tracing its strings, searching for something new, a sound that hadn't yet found its name. Aldrich sat by the fire, his hands clasped around a mug he hadn't drunk from. Elara polished a cup nearby, her movements unhurried, listening to the music like it was telling her a secret. It was Hilda, the old widow with the soft eyes, who broke the silence. "You play like the river, boy," she said. Slow, deep, full of remembering. Tomlin looked up. "The river?" She said, smiling faintly. "The quiet river. The one that runs behind Thornmere. My husband used to hum its tune when we'd sit by the bank. Said the water carried the songs of everyone who'd ever listened to it." Tomlin plucked a few notes, hesitant, testing. "How did it go?" She hummed, low and trembling, the sound of something both fragile and eternal. It wasn't a melody you could write down, only feel. Tomlin followed her hum with his strings, shaping her voice into sound. The fire cracked softly. The tavern fell silent, every ear turning toward that gentle tune. A fiddle joined in, an old man's bow trembling as it found its rhythm. Then the whistle, then the soft beat of a spoon on tin. One by one, they layered their sound like ripples joining in a stream. And soon, there it was, the ballad of the quiet river. It began as a murmur, a sound made of water and memory. It rose and fell like breathing, full of pauses, full of patience. And as they played, the villagers began to remember, the sound of their mother's laughter, the shape of the hills they'd grown up beneath, the scent of spring rain when they were children. Elara felt tears gather in her eyes. She didn't wipe them away. When the song ended, no one spoke. Even the fire seemed still, as though afraid to disturb the silence left behind. Finally, Aldrich's voice broke the quiet, rough and tender. "That's not just a song," he said. "That's us." He stood, slowly, his joints creaking like the old wood. "Every village has its tune. We just remembered ours." Hilda smiled, eyes glinting in the firelight. "The river never forgot. It was waiting for us to listen again." Tomlin lowered his lute. The last note still trembled in the air, fading into the crackle of burning oak. Outside, the real river whispered beyond the fog, its flow steady and sure. And for the first time in years, it sounded like it was singing with them. Elara stepped outside after everyone had gone. The fog clung to her hair, cool and soft. She could hear the river in the dark, running past the old mill, past the stones and reeds, carrying their song out into the wide, waiting world. She whispered into the mist, "Carry it far, but bring it back again." And in the faintest echo of moving water, it sounded like the river answered, "I will." The days in Thornmere began to drift together, slow and golden, like the last pages of a forgotten book. Each evening, the tavern doors opened, the lantern was lit, and music rose like the scent of bread, familiar, comforting, alive. But something was changing. The songs weren't just tunes anymore. They were becoming stories. Aldrich noticed at first, how the words people murmured between verses began to shape themselves into meaning. How the pauses in melody carried more than silence. One night, as Tomlin tuned his lute, a young woman named Mira, a weaver with ink-stained fingers, stood near the hearth and said softly, "There should be words to that river song." The room quieted. She looked uncertain, but Elara smiled and gestured for her to go on. So Mira began to sing. Her voice was thin at first, but true, like sunlight through glass. The melody followed the ballad of the quiet river, but her words turned it into something new. There was a boy who followed sound. Down to where the water sleeps. He heard his name upon the waves. And what the river keeps, it keeps. A hush fell over the room. The fire crackled, the wind hummed in the chimney, and even the mug seemed to still in midair. When she finished, no one moved for a moment. Then Tomlin struck a soft chord, one note, then another, guiding her voice gently back into the room. Together, they played it again, shaping it, softening it, until it felt as though the tavern itself was humming along. By the end of the night, everyone knew the words. They sang it once more, not as performers, but as keepers of something fragile. Aldrich wiped at his eyes, though he'd never admit it. That, he said hoarsely, that's the kind of song that outlives us. Hilda nodded. Like the river. Elara stood behind the counter, the candles flickering across her face. Maybe that's what songs are for, she whispered. To keep the parts of us that time tries to take. Outside, the fog thickened, but inside, the air shimmered, a quiet communion of hearts remembering themselves through melody. Later that night, after the crowd had gone, Tomlin lingered by the fire. The tavern felt full even when empty, as if the music still floated between the beams. He played a few notes softly, eyes half closed. Then, under his breath, he whispered the words Mira had sung, "What the river keeps, it keeps." Aldrich watched him from behind the counter, smiling faintly. That's how the old songs begin, he said. Not in books. Not in ink. In whispers. Tomlin looked up. Do they ever end? Aldrich considered. Only when no one listens. Outside, the lantern burned low. The fog pressed against the windows like a patient hand. Inside, the music lingered, not loud, not proud, just present, steady as breath, warm as life itself. And somewhere beneath the rafters, a story was being born, not written, not told, but sung into being. The first frost arrived quietly, wrapping Thornmere in silver. The river slowed, the trees bowed low beneath white breath, and every window in the village began to glow with the gold of small fires. Inside the tavern, the hearth roared brighter than ever. Flames licked the old stones, curling and cracking as if eager to speak. People gathered closer to the warmth, travelers shaking off the cold, villagers sharing bread and silence in equal measure. Elara leaned near the fire, resting her chin on her hands. It sounds different tonight, she said softly. Aldrich looked up from the counter. The fire? She nodded. Listen, it's telling something. The crackle was steady, rhythmic. Now and then it popped sharply, almost like laughter. Then a low hiss rolled through the room, soft and long, like a sigh. Hilda smiled from her corner. Old flames always talk. You just have to stop thinking long enough to hear them. A few people chuckled. Tomlin plucked his lute idly, matching his notes to the fire's rhythm, crackle, chord, hiss, hum. Then something strange happened. When the boy's string snapped, a quick, high twang, the fire flared. For a moment, just a flicker, the flames shaped themselves like a figure bending low over an anvil. Sparks flew like molten rain. The blacksmith gasped. That looked like me, Aldrich finished quietly. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Years ago. The room stilled. The fire shifted again, slower this time, forming the faint outline of a younger Aldrich, lifting barrels, laughing, stoking that same hearth. Then the image fell apart, turning back into nothing but light. No one spoke. Only the sound of wood giving way to ember filled the air. Finally, Hilda whispered, "It remembers." Ilara's voice trembled. "The fire?" "The tavern," Hilda said. "All of it. Every song, every story, every warmth that's ever passed through these walls, it remembers." Aldrich stared into the flames. "And now it's telling us back." The fire popped sharply, as if in agreement. For the rest of the night, no one sang. No one needed to. They simply sat and watched, listening to the language of the fire, the rise and fall, the whisper and sigh. In its light, faces softened, time blurred, and for a few hours, every soul in the tavern belonged not to the present, but to something older. As the last log fell into glowing red, Ilara said softly, "If warmth could speak, this is what it would sound like." Aldrich nodded. "And if memory had a face, it would burn, not fade." When the tavern finally emptied, he stayed behind, stirring the ashes gently. One ember still glowed, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. He smiled at it. "Good night, old friend," he said. "We're listening now." Outside, the frost deepened, and the lantern's flame flickered like a sigh. Inside, the last ember dimmed, but did not die. It waited. And somewhere deep within the stones, a quiet warmth stirred, ready to tell its next story. By morning, the tavern smelled of smoke and sleep. Ashes glowed faintly in the hearth, the color of old pearls, still alive with quiet heat. Ilara was the first to rise. She stirred the embers gently, coaxing a small flame back to life. As she worked, she heard it, faint and far away. Not a sound from outside, not the creak of wood or wind. Something softer. Something inside the fire. A voice, low, blurred, like the memory of a voice. She froze, breath caught. The words weren't clear, just a hum of tone and rhythm. But there was feeling in it, kindness, perhaps, or regret. She leaned closer. The sound faded. Then returned. A murmur, a sigh, a name, Aldrich. She stumbled back. The poker clattered to the floor. Moments later, Aldrich appeared at the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's wrong?" Ilara pointed at the hearth. "It said your name." He frowned, stepped closer. The embers hissed quietly, a long exhale of warmth. It said, "What?" Before she could answer, it came again, softer now, as though shy. "Aldrich, keep it warm." He froze. The voice was thin, almost fragile, but familiar. It carried an ache that time hadn't erased. "Elira," he whispered. The name left his lips like a prayer. Ilara looked up at him. "Who was that?" "My wife," he said slowly. "She used to say those words whenever we closed for the night." He knelt by the fire, eyes glistening in the glow. The night before she passed, she said them again. "I thought." He stopped. The fire cracked, soft and steady, as if answering him. The room felt alive, not haunted, but held. The warmth was different now. It wasn't just heat, it was presence. Word spread quickly through Thornmere that morning. By evening, people came again, not for ale or song, but to listen. They gathered around the hearth, silent, breath shallow. The fire burned low, only embers and faint tongues of flame. The air was thick with something sacred. At first, there was only the sound of burning wood. Then, a murmur. A child's laughter. The echo of a mug placed on a table. The faint hum of a tune that had been played nights ago. Hilda's eyes filled with tears. "It remembers us," she whispered. No one spoke. The fire whispered again, this time not in words, but in rhythm, the soft cadence of remembered conversation. Tomlin said quietly, "Maybe it keeps what we forget." Aldrich smiled faintly. "Maybe warmth never really fades. It just changes shape." They stayed like that for hours, watching the embers pulse, listening for voices that might come or go. The tavern felt like a heart, old, slow, and beating. When the last of the villagers left, Elara lingered by the hearth. "Do you think it'll speak again?" she asked. Aldrich nodded. "It always does. We just forget how to listen." He turned the lantern down low. The fire dimmed to a faint orange glow. As they closed the door, a single whisper rose from the ashes, softer than breath. "Thank you, for remembering." Neither of them heard it. But the tavern did. And it kept that whisper safe, deep in its wooden bones. Winter deepened. The sky over Thornmere turned pale as ash, and the river slowed to a whisper beneath its frozen skin. Every path, every roof, every window wore white. But the tavern remained gold. Each night, its light flickered like a promise against the snow. Inside, Aldrich had begun a small ritual. Before closing, when the last mug was washed and the benches wiped down, he would kneel before the hearth with quiet hands. He'd place 3 things beside the embers: one small log, a folded scrap of parchment, and a pinch of dried rosemary. Elara had watched him do it for a week before she finally asked, "Why those?" He smiled faintly. "The log is for tomorrow's warmth. The paper holds what I wish I'd said today. And the rosemary, well, that's for remembrance." "What do you write?" He looked toward the flames. "Little things. Nothing grand. Sometimes a name. Sometimes a thank you." He fed the parchment gently into the fire. The flame took it slow, curling the edges like old parchment turning to gold. The ink disappeared, but the air smelled faintly of rosemary and oak. Elara watched the smoke twist upward, soft and patient. "Do you think it reaches anyone?" Aldrich nodded once. "Everything that burns becomes light. Light always finds its way." That night, after Aldrich went upstairs, Elara stayed behind. The tavern felt alive, the fire whispering, the rafters creaking, the lanterns breathing dim. She found an old scrap of paper and wrote her own small words. "For those who left quietly, we remember." She slipped it into the flame. It caught at once, burning bright and fast, like something eager to be seen. The fire hummed softly, and she thought she heard a faint voice, not words, just tone, a gentle sigh, full of peace. From that night on, others began to follow Aldrich's ritual. The blacksmith left a nail he'd forged but never used. Hilda left a half-knitted glove. Tomlin left a broken lute string. Each offering was small, humble, but together, they built a kind of quiet communion. No one spoke of it aloud. They didn't call it magic. They simply did it. And the fire accepted every gift. Sometimes it crackled brighter, sometimes it whispered low, but always it responded, always it kept. Weeks passed. The frost thickened. One evening, as Aldrich was locking the door, he turned to look at the hearth and said softly, "Keep it for me, old friend. Keep it all." The flame flickered once, high, sharp, golden. Elara smiled. "It heard you." "I know," he said. "It always does." When the lights dimmed, the tavern didn't fall silent. Beneath the floorboards, within the walls, in the still breath of the chimney, there was the faintest sound, not words, not music, but something like the pulse of memory. The warmth lived on, patient, endless, waiting to be kindled again. There are winters that arrive with teeth, sharp, bitter, unkind. And then there are winters that arrive like a sigh, soft and solemn, laying their hands gently over the earth as if to bless it. The winter that followed the tavern's ritual was the second kind. Snow fell in silence, long, slow threads from a silver sky. It did not cover Thornmere as much as cradle it. The village roofs bowed beneath the weight, but the tavern's chimney never stopped breathing gold into the gray air. Elara began to notice something strange. When she stepped outside in the early morning, before anyone had spoken, the snow around the tavern seemed to hum. It wasn't a melody. More like the ghost of one, a soft vibration, like the faint echo of warmth remembered. If she stood very still, she could almost hear it forming words. Still here. Still warm. Still. At first, she thought it was her mind playing tricks, the way cold air can make one dream. But then the others began to notice it too. Children playing in the snow said they could hear the fire singing when they built their snowmen near the tavern walls. The blacksmith swore the frost on his forge glowed faintly gold before dawn. One morning, Aldrich stepped outside with his mug of ale, steam rising, beard frosted white. He listened to the air for a long while and said, almost to himself, "It's learning." Elara tilted her head. "What is?" "The snow," he said softly. "It's learning to listen." He smiled, not in wonder, but in recognition. As though he had expected this all along. That night, he placed another parchment in the fire, blank this time. No ink, no words. He watched it burn, the emptiness of it filling the room with a strange kind of peace. When the paper turned to ash, the wind outside stirred, gentle but clear. It brushed against the windows like fingertips tracing a lullaby. The snow began to fall in rhythm with the crackle of the fire, soft, steady, answering. And so began the quiet song of winter. For weeks, Thornmere lived in that song. Fires burned longer. Doors stayed open. People shared soup, laughter, and small moments of silence that felt holy. The tavern no longer belonged to Aldrich alone. It belonged to the warmth that everyone left behind, in words, in gifts, in memory. Some nights, travelers passing through would pause by the door, unsure why the place felt so alive. They'd whisper, "There's something breathing in there." And they were right. Not a ghost. Not a spirit. Just warmth, patient, remembering, eternal. Elara first heard it on a night when the wind forgot how to move. The tavern was heavy with warmth, the kind that clings to your eyelashes, that hums softly inside your ribs. Guests had long gone to their beds, leaving behind only the sigh of settling wood and the small ticking breath of the fire. She sat by the hearth, mending a torn sleeve by candlelight, when the floor spoke. Not loudly. Not even in words. But there was a low hum, deep and steady, rising from the stone beneath her feet, like the purr of a giant sleeping far below. At first, she froze. Then, slowly, she laid her palm flat against the flagstones. The warmth vibrated against her skin. It wasn't frightening. It felt alive. She closed her eyes, listening. The sound deepened, faint, like something buried under layers of time. And within that hum, she began to hear fragments of voices. A laugh here. A murmur there. A child's giggle wrapped in the echo of a song. Elara's breath caught. "Aldrich," she whispered. "Come quickly." The old brewer shuffled from his room, robe dragging, candle trembling in his hand. He leaned down, pressing his ear close to the stone. After a long silence, he exhaled. "Ah," he said softly. "They've started speaking again." "Who?" "Those who warmed this place before us," Aldrich said. "Every hearth that has ever burned remembers. But not all are kind enough to answer." He placed his palm on the floor beside hers. The hum deepened, almost like recognition. "When a fire burns with love," he said, "it never really goes out. It seeps into the stone, waits, and whispers back to those who still listen." Elara stared at the dancing flames. "So, the tavern remembers us?" Aldrich smiled, weary, wise, his eyes golden from reflection. "It remembers everything. Every laugh, every tear, every story told too late and too softly. All of it seeps into the hearth, becoming part of its hum." The two sat in silence, feeling the quiet pulse of the stones beneath them. Somewhere deep below, the hum shifted, a slow rise and fall, like the rhythm of breath. And in that soft sound, Elara could almost hear her mother's voice, a lullaby she hadn't remembered in years. She didn't tell Aldrich. She didn't have to. He already knew. The fire cracked once, sharply, as if agreeing. Then it settled again, and the tavern exhaled, slow and steady, like a sleeper dreaming of old warmth. From that night on, Elara began to listen differently. Not for songs or stories, but for the small kindnesses hidden beneath noise. The whisper of ladles, the murmur of mugs, the sigh of benches that had held generations. All of them alive. All of them remembering. It was near the end of winter when Elara found the ember. The tavern was empty that night, travelers delayed by snow, locals tucked safely in their cottages. Only the wind spoke, brushing past the window panes like a child who didn't want to be forgotten. Elara moved quietly, cleaning mugs, humming a tune she couldn't name. The fire had burned low, just ash and a faint red glow in the hearth's heart. She knelt to stir it, hoping to coax a little more warmth before bed. That's when she saw it. A coal, no larger than her thumb, burning brighter than it should. Not orange, not red, but golden white, like the heart of sunlight caught in a shell. She blinked. The tavern seemed to dim around it, as if all light had been drawn inward to feed that single ember. She reached for the poker, but the air around the ember shimmered softly, humming with a pulse that matched her heartbeat. When she leaned closer, the sound wasn't a hum anymore, it was a voice. "You've been listening," it said. "Now, you may remember." Elara froze. The voice wasn't frightening. It felt familiar. Like her grandmother whispering by the fire when she was little. The ember flickered, showing images in the flames. Hands kneading dough, laughter echoing off beams, the brewer's first cup poured long ago, tears shed beside a sleeping friend. Each memory burned bright, then folded gently back into the coal. Aldrich appeared in the doorway, candlelight trembling. "You found it," he said quietly. "What is it?" Elara asked, voice barely above breath. He knelt beside her. "The tavern's first fire. The one that never went out. Every time the flame was passed, this ember stayed, kept alive by those who believed warmth was more than heat." "It's alive," Elara whispered. "It's remembering," Aldrich corrected softly. "That's what warmth really is. Memory made kind." The ember pulsed once more, steady, patient, like the heart of the world. "Keep listening," it whispered. "When the snow melts, I will tell you where I came from." Elara looked at Aldrich, but his eyes were closed, tears glimmering in the corners. The tavern hummed again, the walls, the floor, the air, all alive with quiet music. The ember in the hearth shone a little brighter, and for a moment, Thornmere itself seemed to glow beneath the falling snow. And though no one outside could see it, they all felt it. Warmth spreading through dreams. Old songs stirring in their sleep. A promise that winter would end gently, not with a shatter, but with a sigh. Long before Thornmere's tavern was ever built, there stood a small abbey on the hill, half stone, half shadow, cradled by the arms of a silent forest. Its bells no longer rang. Its windows had been swallowed by ivy. But in the garden behind the chapel, something still grew. Not wild grass. Not flowers. A herb, silver green and faintly glowing when touched by moonlight. Its leaves gave off a smell like warmth remembered, a strange mix of honey and smoke. Few knew of it, and fewer dared to touch it. Except for one. Brother Calin. He was a quiet monk, known less for his prayers than for his silences. While others recited psalms, he tended the herbs, whispering to them, listening more than speaking. He believed that everything living carried memory. Not words, but intent. And that if one learned to listen to leaves the way one listened to souls, the earth itself could reveal kindness. One winter night, as frost bit through the garden, Calin found the herb glowing brighter than he had ever seen. He leaned close, brushing a fingertip over its trembling edge. The plant pulsed once, faint but warm, and he heard a whisper rise from the soil itself. Warmth may die, but never disappears. Startled, he pulled back, heart pounding. The herb trembled again, and the scent of honey deepened, sweet, alive, ancient. He gathered a few leaves, crushed them, and added them to the abbey's simple barley brew, something the monks drank in winter for strength. That night, the ale shimmered faintly as it cooled. The brothers who drank it said they felt not just warmth, but peace, like sitting beside every fire they had ever known. From then on, Brother Calin added the herb to every batch. He wrote nothing about it. He only prayed in silence, whispering, "Let those who drink remember kindness." When the abbey fell to time, its bells silent, its monks gone. One vial of the herb seed was carried down the hill by a single traveler. No one knew his name. But centuries later, those same leaves would grow behind a small tavern in Thornmere, hidden among weeds, waiting for someone kind enough to hear them again. That someone, of course, was Elara. The snow had begun to melt when Elara found the book. It was early morning, pale light slipping through the shutters, the tavern empty except for the slow drip of thawing icicles. She had been cleaning the old storeroom, a narrow space behind the hearth that smelled of earth and dust, when her hand brushed against something solid tucked behind a loose brick. A small leather journal. The cover, cracked and stiff, carried the faint imprint of a cross and a single faded word. Memoria. She sat by the fire and opened it gently. The pages were yellowed, written in looping Latin script, ink faded to the color of smoke. She couldn't read most of it, but some lines were translated in the margins, notes written in a hand she somehow recognized, Aldrich's. At the top of one page, the words stood out clearly. Ale, brewed for remembrance. Below it, a list of ingredients, barley, water, honey, and something called selenium, a herb she did not know. Then, beneath the list, a passage written almost like a prayer. To brew warmth, one must not only stir the kettle, but the heart. Each turn must carry a thought of gentleness. For the ale remembers not its maker, but his mercy. Elara read it aloud softly, the words tasting strange and old in her mouth. The air in the tavern shifted, almost listening. More pages followed, notes about the herb's scent, the right hour to pick its leaves, when the frost hums softly but before the dawn bell, and instructions for stirring the brew clockwise while whispering a psalm for kindness. And then, the last line of the page. To those who keep this warmth. The ale is not for celebration. It is for healing. Elara closed the book slowly, her heart beating in her throat. She had thought she was just keeping a tavern, pouring ale, serving travelers, tending to fire and stories. But now she understood. She was tending a ritual. Something ancient, quiet, and holy, not in name, but in act. When Aldrich entered the room, she handed him the journal. He looked at it for a long time before speaking. You found him, he said softly. The monk? The one who began it all. The herb, the warmth, the memory, they were his gift. I've been listening for this book since before you were born. He smiled faintly, tracing the faded ink with his thumb. He called it selenium. We called it heartleaf. It's the reason Thornmere never truly freezes. The fire popped gently, scattering sparks. So this ale, Elara said, it was never just for drink. No, Aldrich replied. It was for remembering kindness, so that even in the coldest heart, something small and good might keep glowing. He looked up at her then, the kind of gaze that felt older than both of them. And now, he said, it's your turn to brew. Outside, the first thawed droplet fell from the eaves, landing softly in the snow. The sound was almost like a heartbeat. Night in Thornmere was silent except for the drip of melting snow and the deep hush of a world between seasons. Elara stood by the hearth, the monk's journal open beside her, its pages trembling in the draught. She had gathered everything the old words asked for, barley from Aldrich's store, a spoonful of honey, water drawn from the well at dawn, and, from the garden, a single sprig of the silver-green herb that glowed faintly in her palm. Aldrich watched from his chair, his hands folded as if in prayer. "The first brew was made under bells," he murmured. "But our bells fell centuries ago," Elara said. "Then listen closer," he answered. "Some echoes never stop." She set the kettle above the fire. As it began to hum, the tavern filled with that slow, sweet scent, barley's warmth, the herbs' cool smoke, and something older, deeper, like candle wax melting in memory. Elara stirred clockwise, just as the book said, whispering the words she barely understood. "Let kindness rise. Let warmth remember. Let no one drink alone." Each turn of the spoon made the liquid shimmer. The firelight shifted from gold to pale white, and for a moment she heard them, faint bells far away, their tones soft and pure, ringing not through air but through her bones. The sound deepened. The tavern walls seemed to breathe. Every plank, every cup, every stone beneath the hearth thrummed with quiet joy. Aldrich closed his eyes, tears catching the light. "There," he whispered. "The abbey remembers." When Elara lifted the spoon, the brew glowed softly, not bright, not blinding, just the hue of old stories kept alive too long to die. She poured a single cup and handed it to Aldrich. He drank slowly, the lines of his face smoothing with every swallow. "It tastes like peace," he said. Then she drank. The warmth spread through her, not fiery, but gentle, filling every space that had ever been cold. In that quiet, she heard voices layered within the bells, laughter, prayer, lullabies, 1,000 tiny kindnesses ringing together. And when the final note faded, only stillness remained, rich, complete, alive. Elara placed the cup down carefully. The old monk's journal lay open, its ink faintly shining. On the last page, words had appeared where none had been before. "When you hear no bells, brew them." The fire answered with a soft sigh, and outside, the thawing world exhaled. Snow dripped from the roof in steady rhythm. Ding! Dong! Ding! Bells enough for anyone who still listened. By the time spring began to creep through Thornmere, the tavern had changed. Not in walls or furniture, but in the air itself. There was something alive within it now, something that seemed to move between the cracks of sound and light. If you sat very still, you could feel it. The fire breathed in. The walls breathed out. Even the tables seemed to lean closer when people laughed. Elara didn't speak of the night she brewed beneath the unseen bells. She didn't need to. The village could feel it, in the way warmth lingered longer, in how the ale shimmered faintly when poured. Travelers passing through would stop mid-sentence, cups halfway to their lips, whispering, "It feels like someone's remembering me." And then they'd smile, though they didn't know why. Aldrich watched it all from his corner chair, a quiet pride glowing in his tired eyes. Sometimes he'd say softly, "She's breathing well tonight." When Elara asked who, he only nodded toward the room. The tavern. That night, the hearth glowed brighter than usual. Rain tapped gently at the windows, the first of spring's soft storms. Villagers huddled near the fire, their laughter unhurried, drifting between stories and silences. A boy strummed a lute in the corner, not well, but with heart. The melody tripped over itself, found its footing again, then settled into something honest and warm. And as the night grew deeper, a strange peace filled the tavern, a peace made not from quiet, but from belonging. Aldrich lifted his cup. "To warmth that listens," he said. The crowd repeated it softly, the words turning to music in their mouths. To warmth that listens. The fire answered with a long sigh, and for a heartbeat, the flames shaped themselves into the faint outline of two figures, one old, one young, stirring a kettle together beneath invisible bells. No one but Alara saw it. And when she did, she only smiled. She felt no fear, no wonder, only peace. The kind that comes when you realize you're not keeping a fire alive. You're being kept alive by it. And outside, as rain gave way to mist, the breath of the tavern rose softly toward the moon, carrying laughter, warmth, and memory in a single glowing sigh. It began with a single toast. Aldrich, old and steady, lifted his cup high. The ale inside caught the firelight, gold, slow, alive. To warmth that listens, he said again. To warmth that listens, echoed the crowd. Then someone, maybe the blacksmith, maybe the tailor, added softly. And to those who left us that warmth. The tavern quieted. For a breath, it was only the sound of the fire and the faint patter of rain outside. Then Alara smiled and raised her own cup. To the unknown, she said. To the ones who brewed before us. To every story we've forgotten but still feel. The crowd hesitated, unsure if it was proper to toast what they could not name. Then the boy with the lute plucked a trembling note and whispered. They'd want us to drink. Laughter broke out, low, kind, like sunlight after a long fog. One by one, cups lifted again, meeting the flicker of the fire. To the unknown, they cried together, the sound soft but full, like bells muffled in wool. And in that moment, something invisible stirred in the tavern's rafters. The air warmed, the shadows thinned, and the scent of the old herb, honey and smoke, drifted faintly through the room. The laughter that followed wasn't loud or wild. It was gentle. The kind of laughter that says we're still here. Old stories began to surface, half-remembered tales told in low voices. The time a traveler brought a snowflake that never melted. The night someone claimed to see a ghost humming over the kettle. The tale of a monk who brewed moonlight into ale. None of them were told to be believed. They were told to be remembered. Aldrich leaned close to Alara. Do you hear that? He asked. The laughter. Yes, he said. It's never been this quiet and this loud at once. She nodded. It sounds like the tavern's breathing again. He smiled, eyes shining in the firelight. No, he whispered. It sounds like it's laughing with us. Outside, the rain stopped. The moon slipped through the clouds, its light bending through the window like a benediction. Each cup shimmered faintly, gold on the surface, silver beneath. And for just an instant, the reflection of every drinker showed not their own face, but another's, older, gentler, smiling back. The unknown, perhaps. Or simply memory, disguised as light. By the time the last song ended, the fire had shrunk to a single, slow-burning ember. Aldrich sat near it, elbows on knees, staring at the heart of that glow as though it held an answer he'd been seeking all his life. The others had gone quiet, not asleep, not awake. Just resting in the stillness that comes after good laughter. The tavern was no longer full of sound, but of breath. Mira was curled by the hearth, her lute resting on her chest. The innkeeper had stopped polishing cups and leaned against the counter, eyes half closed, smiling at nothing in particular. Even the air itself seemed content, rich with warmth, wood, and a faint trace of honeyed smoke. Outside, the rain had left the cobblestones gleaming like black mirrors. The village slept, roofs glistening under the slow-moving moon. Aldrich whispered softly. "It's always this way, isn't it? The end of warmth." Elara, sitting beside him, nodded. "Only if no one keeps it," she said. He turned to her, tired eyes searching. "And who will keep it after us?" "Someone always does," she said gently. "Even if it's just a whisper." The ember cracked, a soft, golden sigh. A wisp of smoke coiled upward, slow as breath, before vanishing into the rafters. Elara cupped her hands near it. "See? It doesn't vanish, Aldrich. It just travels." He smiled faintly, the lines on his face deepening with memory. "You talk like an old story." "Maybe I am," she said. "Maybe we all are. Just written in warmth instead of words." Aldrich raised his mug, nearly empty now. The last sip had gone cold, but he drank it anyway, eyes never leaving the ember. Then, setting it down, he whispered. "To warmth that travels." Elara lifted hers, mirroring him. "To warmth that travels," she repeated. The others, half asleep, murmured the words too, a final toast that drifted through the room like a prayer. The ember dimmed. Not gone, just hidden. The tavern settled into silence, the kind that holds you like a blanket. The faintest hum lingered, not from the lute, not from any living voice. It was the sound of everything that had ever been warm, still echoing softly in the walls. And when Aldrich finally closed his eyes, he didn't see the dying fire. He saw hands, hundreds of them, lifting cups across time, sharing laughter, passing warmth forward. To those who would come after. To those who would sit where he sat. To those who would listen and sleep and remember. The ember's last glow flickered once more, then melted into the dark. When Aldrich opened his eyes, he expected dawn. But what met him instead was a dim, silver half-light, the kind that belongs neither to night nor to morning. The hearth was cold. The last ember, that soft traveler of warmth, had finally vanished into the dark. For a moment, he wondered if he'd slept at all, or if he'd only dreamed that he had. The tavern was still full of the memory of laughter, yet no voices remained. The benches, the mugs, the walls, all seemed to hum faintly with something that used to be alive. Elara wasn't there. Her chair was empty, her cup turned over, a small petal of ash resting inside it. Aldrich stood slowly, bones creaking like the old floor beneath him. He moved toward the window, expecting to see the faint pink of morning. But the sky outside was colorless, pale, endless, unmoving. The rain had stopped, but the world looked paused. No wind. No birds. Just silence, thick and weightless. He pressed his hand to the glass. It was cold, not cruelly, but gently. Like a reminder. He could see his reflection faintly, blurred by the frost. Behind it, he thought he saw others, faces from the night before, smiling faintly. Or perhaps it was only the candle smoke trapped in the glass. "Elara," he called softly. His voice felt strange in that stillness, too loud, too real. He turned back to the tavern. The air shimmered faintly, the way air does above fire, except there was no fire now. Just the echo of one. And then he heard it, faint, distant, but unmistakable. A cup clinking. Once. He turned. On the far table, a mug rocked gently on its own, as if someone unseen had just set it down. Aldrich didn't move closer. He only whispered. "Still here, aren't you?" No answer came, but the room seemed to breathe, the timbers creaked, the air shifted, and a thin line of pale light touched the floorboards. It wasn't morning. It wasn't night. It was something in between, the hour that the world forgets to wake. He sat back down at the table and poured what little ale remained. It didn't taste of warmth anymore, but it didn't taste of loss either. Just stillness. To the dawn that forgot to rise, he murmured. May it find its way someday. Outside, the pale window stayed unchanged, a canvas without sun or moon. But for the first time in a long while, Aldrich didn't feel the need to leave. He simply sat there, breathing the quiet. Somewhere, far off, a rooster crowed once, weakly, uncertainly, as though even dawn itself had overslept. At first, Aldrich thought it was only his heartbeat. That soft, rhythmic pulse in the stillness. But when he held his breath, the sound remained, faint, distant, alive. A tune. Not played by any hand, nor carried by wind. It came from below. He leaned closer to the floorboards, his ear brushing against the worn wood. There it was again, slow, like someone plucking at strings far away. A lullaby almost forgotten, drifting up through the cracks. The sound filled the empty tavern, delicate as candle smoke. It wasn't loud enough to wake anyone, if there was anyone left to wake, but just strong enough to stir the air. He whispered. Mira. No answer. Only the soft hum of the unseen music. It trembled beneath him, as though the tavern itself was remembering. He closed his eyes. And the tune took shape. It was the same melody Mira had played last night, the one that had made everyone laugh softly, made even the rain listen. But now it was slower, stretched thin with memory. Each note felt older than the tavern, older than him. He could almost see it, a dim space below the floorboards, where echoes gathered and stayed long after voices had gone. He pictured cups still warm, footsteps fading, laughter folded neatly into the dark like linen after a feast. The floor creaked beneath his hand, but not from weight, from sound. He swore the wood itself was breathing. He murmured. You're still here, aren't you? And the music swelled, just slightly, a single note held longer than the rest, shimmering in the pale air. Then came a whisper, not a word, just the sigh of warmth, like steam over cooling ale. Aldrich sat back slowly, eyes wide. The sound faded again into the floor, softer and softer, until only the silence remained. He realized then what he was hearing. Not ghosts. Not magic. Just memory doing what warmth does best, refusing to die quietly. He smiled faintly. The tavern remembers better than I do. And for the first time that pale morning, he laughed, one soft breath of joy that made the cold air feel almost warm again. Outside, the colorless sky flickered faintly. Not dawn. But maybe the thought of dawn. The song returned once more, quieter, deeper, as if coming from beneath miles of time. A hum that could only mean one thing. Even silence dreams. Aldrich stayed by the window long after the song faded. The tavern had returned to stillness, but something in the air had changed, a faint shimmer, a softness like air that's been warmed by unseen hands. The light outside was still pale, colorless, unmoving. And yet, the inside of the tavern began to glow. Not bright. Not sudden. Just a slow radiance, as though the wood itself had remembered sunlight and decided to share it again. The beams, the tables, even the empty cups seemed to breathe with it. Every edge softened, every shadow grew kind. Aldrich stood. His footsteps echoed softly, and each sound left behind a trace of gold that faded as he moved. "Elara," he whispered again, but not out of loneliness this time, out of awe. "I think I found it." He didn't know what it was. The missing dawn, perhaps. Or simply the warmth that had refused to leave. He walked toward the center of the room. The light followed, tracing his steps like water remembering a riverbed. And when he reached the hearth, cold since the night before, he saw something impossible. The ashes were glowing. Not fire, not embers, but light itself. Soft, silent, unhurried. Each speck shimmered faintly, rising like dust motes in golden air. He knelt down and touched one. It didn't burn. It didn't fade. It simply rested in his palm, warm as a heartbeat. And from somewhere, deep within the tavern, or deep within himself, he heard Elara's voice. "Light doesn't fall, Aldrich. It remembers where to go." He closed his eyes. The warmth pulsed once in his hand, then seeped gently into his skin. For a heartbeat, he felt everything: laughter, song, the hum beneath the floor, the pale morning sky. All of it living quietly in one place, his chest. He smiled. Not the smile of a man who has found the end of a journey, but the smile of one who understands the road never ends at all. Aldrich stood and looked around the tavern. The glow began to fade now, slipping softly back into the wood, the walls, the floor. But he knew it wasn't gone. It was only resting. He whispered one last toast into the golden air. To light that never fell. And somewhere, in that pale and endless morning, a beam of color touched the horizon, faint, like the memory of dawn trying to find its way home. Snow had come at last. Aldrich woke to the sound of it pressing softly against the windows, not falling, but arriving, like a visitor too polite to knock. The tavern was colder now. The faint glow that had lingered for days had drifted into the wood and gone quiet again, as if hibernating. He wrapped his old cloak tighter around himself and moved toward the bar. The shelves stood bare. The last of the ale was gone. He tipped the nearest barrel, listening to the hollow thump of its emptiness. That sound, once so common, now echoed like a final breath. "So," he murmured, "the last cup's been drunk." But the words didn't sound sad. They sounded right. The tavern had given all it could: warmth, laughter, songs that lived beyond their singers. Now it asked for nothing. Aldrich set the barrel upright and brushed frost from its rim. The air smelled faintly of oak and honey, a ghost of what had once filled the room. He walked to the window. Outside, the snow had turned the world into parchment, blank, silent, waiting. He thought of Elara, of Mira, of the nameless travelers who'd sat by this same fire before him. Each had left something: a sound, a smile, a word, small pieces of warmth that now filled the tavern's silence like threads of gold in an old cloak. Aldrich whispered, "You've all gone, haven't you?" The wood creaked, soft, familiar. A sound that might have been the building's breath, or its answer. He smiled. I suppose it's my turn to rest too. He sat by the hearth, cold, but kind, and placed his hands on his knees. The frost on the inside of the window caught the weak morning light, scattering it into thousands of tiny stars. For a long time, he said nothing. He just listened, to the sound of the snow against the door, to the faint groan of the beams, to the memory of laughter that refused to fade. And then, as though guided by instinct, he reached for the empty cup beside him. He lifted it slowly, raising it toward the silent rafters. To the last cup, he said softly. And to all the warmth it held. He drank nothing, yet it filled him. The snow continued its quiet descent, burying the road, softening the roof, wrapping the tavern in a gentle hush. And for the first time, Aldrich didn't feel the cold. The knock came so softly that Aldrich thought he'd imagined it. Once. Then again. 3 quiet taps, like someone testing whether the world still remembered how to open. He rose from his chair, the floor creaking beneath his boots. The tavern was cold enough that his breath fogged before him, curling in slow ribbons through the air. Who could it be? He murmured to the room, though the room had long since stopped answering. He crossed to the door and pressed his ear against it. Silence. Then, faintly, a shuffle. Aldrich unlatched the bolt and pulled it open. The wind didn't rush in, it sighed. And there, half buried in snow, stood a figure, small, wrapped in a heavy cloak, hood dusted white. You'll freeze out there, Aldrich said, his voice half gentle, half surprised. The figure hesitated, then stepped forward into the light. Beneath the hood was a young face, tired, flushed from cold, eyes bright with the kind of wonder that still believes stories might be true. I didn't think anyone was still here, the traveler said softly. Aldrich smiled. Neither did I. He gestured toward the empty room. Come in. There's no fire left, but the walls still remember what warmth feels like. The traveler entered, brushing snow from their cloak. They looked around the tavern as if they already knew it, as if they'd been here in dreams. I found this place by accident, the traveler said. Or maybe by memory. My grandmother used to tell me stories about a tavern that never went dark. Aldrich tilted his head. The ale of evening? Yes. For a moment, the silence between them grew soft, not empty, but shared. Aldrich poured the last drop of ale into 2 cups, though it barely filled them halfway. It's cold, he said, but it's still true. They raised their cups together. To warmth that travels, Aldrich whispered. To warmth that travels, echoed the traveler. They drank. And for an instant, brief, fragile, perfect, the tavern glowed again. Not from fire, not from sunlight, but from recognition. The traveler looked around, eyes wide. It feels alive, they said. Aldrich nodded slowly. It is. It always has been. It only needed someone to remember. Outside, the snow began to lighten, not melting, but glowing faintly as though the sky itself had blushed. The traveler smiled. Will it ever be morning again? Aldrich looked to the pale window. Maybe. But mornings don't hurry for those who've learned to wait. And in that waiting, the warmth returned, not as heat, but as peace. 2 souls. 2 cups. And a tavern that remembered every fire that ever burned within it. The snow had stopped. Outside, the world rested under a heavy white silence, clean, endless, soft as breath. Inside, the tavern waited. The hearth, cold for so long, seemed to lean toward the two figures at its center, Aldrich and the traveler, cups empty, hands wrapped around nothing but memory. Aldrich set his cup down. The faint sound of it on the wood echoed gently through the room, like a heartbeat returning. The traveler knelt by the fireplace. "Do you ever try to light it again?" Aldrich smiled, his eyes tracing the ash. "Sometimes. But fire is a proud thing. It doesn't return for those who ask too loudly." The traveler ran a gloved hand through the ashes. Cold. Lifeless. And yet, beneath it, a spark. Tiny. Gold. It flickered once and went still. The traveler looked up. "It's here," they whispered. Aldrich blinked, unsure if he'd seen it too. "Where?" "Right here," the traveler said, cupping their hands around the faint shimmer. "It's been waiting." They breathed softly into their palms. The spark trembled, fluttered, then caught. A single thread of light wound upward through their fingers, growing not from wood, but from warmth itself. Aldrich leaned close, eyes wide. "That shouldn't be possible." "Maybe it isn't," the traveler said, smiling faintly. "Maybe it's just remembering." The glow slipped from their hands and fell into the hearth, spreading through the ashes in delicate veins of gold. Then, a breath. The air thickened. The sound of cracking wood, faint and slow, like an old story opening its eyes. Fire. Small at first. Then stronger, steady, glowing with a warmth that felt ancient and new at once. The tavern's shadows danced again, stretching like long-forgotten ghosts who'd been waiting to move. Aldrich laughed, the sound full, trembling, alive. "You've brought it back." "No," said the traveler, eyes bright in the firelight. "You kept it long enough for me to find." The light filled the room, touching every corner, the shelves, the tables, even the empty barrels. Everything glowed as though it remembered its purpose. Aldrich poured what remained of the ale into 2 cups. The liquid shimmered gold in the fire's reflection. "To fire that remembers," he said. "To warmth that travels," the traveler replied. They clinked their cups softly. The sound was music. Outside, the snow glowed faintly under a pale morning sky, the first true dawn in many days. Light touched the window, slid across the bar, and reached the fire like an old friend returning home. Aldrich leaned back, his face bathed in gold. "It knows its name again," he whispered. The traveler smiled, staring into the flames. "Then maybe it will teach us ours." And for a long, unmeasured time, they sat in silence, listening to the tavern breathe, watching the fire dance, feeling the world warm again from the inside out. The fire burned low, its light no longer gold but clear, almost colorless, like distilled memory. Each flame moved as if remembering a dance from long ago. Aldrich watched in silence. The traveler sat across from him, their cloak folded neatly, their pack beside the door, ready, waiting. Neither spoke for a while. Words would have only disturbed the gentle hum of the world waking outside. The snow had stopped days ago, and now faint threads of mist curled through the trees, soft as smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a river ran, thin, thawing, alive. Aldrich finally said. It's strange. I thought when warmth returned, I'd want to keep it. The traveler looked at him, eyes reflecting the clear fire. And now? Now, Aldrich said softly, I think it was never meant to stay. Only to remind me what staying means. The traveler smiled. You speak like someone who's ready to walk. Aldrich chuckled, though it caught in his throat. I don't even remember where the road begins anymore. The traveler stood, lifting their pack. It begins wherever the fire ends. Aldrich's gaze drifted to the hearth, to the last ember burning clean and white, light without smoke. It seemed to pulse once, like a heartbeat, then fade into the quiet. The room was warm still, but the warmth no longer came from the fire. It came from within. He rose slowly, feeling his age, yet lighter than before. His coat hung by the door, patched, old, but still carrying the scent of pine and smoke. He put it on, tightening the belt. How far are you going? He asked. As far as the evening allows, said the traveler, opening the door. There's always another tavern somewhere, another story waiting to thaw. The morning light spilled in, pale and patient. Snow glimmered in soft waves. The road stretched out, narrow, uncertain, but welcoming. Aldrich hesitated, hand resting on the doorframe. He looked back once, at the tables, the shelves, the quiet air that had held so many voices. Then he whispered to the empty room. Keep the warmth. Someone else will need it. He stepped out into the morning. The traveler fell into step beside him. Together they walked down the road, two small figures wrapped in the hush of melting snow. Behind them, the tavern stood still, smoke curling gently from its chimney, not gray, not gold, but clear. The ale of evening had finally run pure.